talk to me some more, because I need to understand why I'm reacting to this. It's not your fault that I'm reacting like this, because I assume that you didn't mean to offend me willfully, so it's not your fault, which means it's on me. It's my choice to get offended, it's my reaction. And if I want to understand it, I need to talk to you. I need to figure out what drove your choice of communication, because then I can figure out, okay, how am I going to deal with my own reactions and with my choice of communication going forward. Welcome to this little series of conversations that I'm conducting with my good friend Arun Prakash that came off the back of a few articles that I have written, which will be available on LinkedIn over the next weeks and months, which is again based on a book I have written called The Big White Mint, about public speaking, about how we communicate, about why we communicate. And we decided that we would have a few conversations about these articles that I've written and see if we can dig a little bit deeper into what this is about. So thank you for meeting me, and you're the question master.
Let's do it. So Martin, after reading all your 3 articles, I have a lot of questions. I've boiled down those questions based on the articles. The first article is about, if I should reiterate, how an 80s B movies can change communication. And under this article, I have a couple of questions. Number 1 is, in what ways do you think social media communication is suffocating, and how can we counteract this trend?
Well, why don't you start with the most difficult question of them all? It's a tricky question. First of all, maybe we should just mention, for the sake of anyone not having followed our work or my work before, that the book that we're talking about is The Big White Mint, which I have written, which is about public speaking, but it's also about communication in general and why we communicate and what we use our speaking skills for. Regards to your question, I think it's a very difficult question to really get to a satisfying answer to, because social media it's a mystery. It's like a swamp of an enigma clouded in strange dynamics and scenarios, because there are so many different dynamics involved in what social media consists of. Of course, the basis of it is, I guess, it's supposed to be a media in which you connect socially with other people. At least that's where, they started these various platforms. But I think most people also recognize that most social media have turned away from being social platforms to being promotional platforms. That a lot of people use them more for being able to promote whatever they're doing, rather than a place where you connect with family members or old high school friends that you lost contact with, and then you can dig up, friends that you used to know, which I remember I used to do on Facebook like 15 years ago. But now that's not where people are there anymore, and especially if you go to places like LinkedIn, then it's a professional profile. It's a professional platform. People come there to connect under a professional umbrella. I think what you have to acknowledge with social media, regardless of whatever the angle of the specific medium might be, that social media is a place where people go that have a need to show something to other people. Regardless of whatever that need might be. If you take like Instagram as a really good example, but also Facebook, a lot of the posts that you see on those types of medias, you can't necessarily see that they're promoting anything. They're not necessarily selling anything. They're not necessarily showcasing their competences, what have you. But at the end of the day, every selfie, every post that goes on there is driven by a personal need for being able to show other people something that they want attention for. Yeah. And that, I think, is what you have to acknowledge is the driving force of any kind of social media, is that you have to accept that that is why people are on social media, is that they are there because they have a personal need to get attention to themselves for whatever it might be. For it being personal reasons, they want to be validated and other people think they're beautiful, or they want to, persuade other people they're talented or competent or whatever it is. And I think that sort of falls sideways sometimes where people... I remember we had a discussion at some point about, let's say, what you're doing on LinkedIn with your Arun in Denmark profile. And you make videos because you want to help people that are coming to Denmark with navigate into the Danish system, the Danish society, how things work, the bureaucracy, learning Danish, yada, yada, yada. And you post videos on LinkedIn about how to best navigate that, and you do it with a purpose of wanting to contribute and wanting to help other people be able to navigate those paths more easily. But you will automatically run into people that think that, I wonder what he's selling. Like, I wonder what is the secret hook that is in it for him. And that sort of, not necessarily skepticism, but just an assumption that people are always there for selfish reasons. They're on social media to make money. They're on to sell something. And that people have that assumption, I think, is actually what creates most of the downfall of social media, that people are not sort of accepting, well, yeah, maybe he is there. Maybe you want to sell something apart from, giving people tips. And for me, that's fair enough, because if there's something that you're good at, then do whatever you need to do to promote it and to get to that point. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm contributing to various networks and public speaking communities and stuff like that. But of course, I'm also showcasing. Of course, I'm also selling, my talents. But I think it's the lack of acknowledgement that everyone is on social media for personal reasons. So there's no sense, in my opinion, in having that sort of skepticism or that sort of, I'm not sure about this guy, because he seems really nice on LinkedIn when Arun is there, talking about, how you can giving these tips. He seems like a nice guy, but I think there's something, I think he's up to something mischievous. Like, I think he's trying to bait something. I can feel it. And that sort of skepticism or that sort of innate mistrust, I think is the biggest problem of social media. And I think most of it is that people just don't acknowledge, well, we're all here for selfish reasons. Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to do anything that is not in my interests. That's just a part of human nature.
I have a question here.
Yeah.
So whenever I make some post on LinkedIn, I get direct messages from connections that I have no clue from different parts of the world.
Right.
And I don't have time for everybody. Let's say a message takes me like 5-10 minutes, and the question seems to be vague in nature, so I have to go and deeply introspect into the question. And if I start spending this time with those unknown connections, then I rather charge some money as a form of giving myself a treat and say, hey, my time is worth, and I can't do it for free. And the offer that I'm giving you is not for free. So in that way, I think one-to-one consultations or giving my tips at a price makes it satisfying for me that I have some value in return and not just giving like a non-profit organization. So does it seem to be cheesy, or does it seem to be that I'm trying to sell stuff? Will people see that as a way of lurking customers in a nice way? How do I tackle this, and how do I seem genuinely a genuine person, not just trying to sell stuff?
I get the problem or the dilemma. I would say there's two things in it. One is what I just said before, and that's people's general perception about what social media is supposed to be about. And the other one is, to me, I think people are often afraid of being open and forthcoming to other people, and also on social media or on platforms or in business ventures. They're afraid of being open about what their motives are and about what they're actually trying to achieve. Meaning that, well, yes, if you do have some competence in a field, I have X amount of competence in terms of public speaking and communication and coaching and stuff like that. My writing, I know when I'm good at that. I'm willing to help people to a certain extent, but of course I want to be allowed to be paid for my competence at some point as well. And I think just in sort of integrating into the communication or what you're sort of putting out there from the beginning, if you can be more open from the beginning about, well, yes, of course, I would like to achieve this and this and this at some point, but I would also like to contribute so that it doesn't seem like you're trying to hide sort of the commercial aspect of what you might want to do at any point until you then suddenly unfold, oh, by the way, I have this huge commercial setup lined up in the back and now I roll it out. If people weren't prepared for that, then it will be perceived as more negative. I think that then it was like, so I knew it. I knew you were up to something. And I think people in general are just afraid of just saying, I'd like to help. I'm also in it to make money. I'm also in it because I think that what I'm doing is worth being paid for. So let's just be open about that. Along the way.
Upfront.
Yeah, upfront, and as we communicate other things about your general, approach to what you're doing.
Question number 2 is, how can we shift focus from superficial attributes like skin color to more substantive qualities like character in everyday interactions?
That's a difficult one, because I mentioned in my book the quote from Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous "I Have a Dream" speech, where he says towards the end, I have a dream that my 4 little children can grow up in a nation that cares more about character than the color of your skin. That's not exactly the quote, but that's the gist of it. And what I've seen the last 5 or 10 years in society in general is that it ties a lot into political correctness and this whole movement that we've seen in the last 10 years with political correctness, that everyone has to be inclusive about everyone. Everyone has to have opportunities. Everyone has to be able to, experience what everyone else experiences. And there's a lot of challenges with that whole movement of political correctness. But what I've seen is that it has moved towards more or less disregarding what a person actually has to say and what opinions and statements a person stands for, and to that the political correctness movement has gotten to a point where, well, it's skin color and it's ethnicity and its sexual orientation first. And that has to be sort of facilitated and approved and embraced. And then at some point after, we can start actually talking to the person and see what are they actually saying. Like, is that something that we can actually agree with? Is that something we can have a conversation about with? And that's why I sadly feel that this whole movement has got sort of the motivation all wrong, because the whole point of moving towards inclusiveness and fairness is obviously to give everyone an equal opportunity. But I just feel that the opposite is happening, that we've actually gotten to a point where we actually don't care what people say or what they really stand for, or much more what their competences actually are. Like, are they good at what they're doing? And that's, I just feel that what we need to get back to is conversation and curiosity and open-mindedness about wanting to talk to people first, before having sort of already divided people into groups of possibilities based on that, okay, you have dark skin, so you should have an opportunity before I get one. Well, why? Or whatever it might be. And I feel with communication there has been a huge sort of derailment of what communication is able to achieve, because a lot of things has sort of taken priority over that. And we need to get back to, first of all, offending someone is okay. Like, me offending you or you feeling offended by something that I say is okay. It's fine. First of all, it won't kill you. You might feel uncomfortable for a while why you feel offended. But if I don't do it on purpose, if I'm not willfully trying to offend you, then whether you get offended by something I say, that's just a reaction. What will likely happen is that it might trigger something in you that will make you gain maybe a little bit more perspective about what you thought of the matter. And then, of course, if you are so bold as to say to me, I actually felt offended by what you say, it triggered something in me personally that just struck my core, then I also have an ability to say, that's interesting. That's obviously not what I intended. But okay, so let's talk about that. I think everything can be understood or explained as long as we're willing to have a conversation. There's things happening in the world right now in terms of wars and conflict and stuff like that, where people are very hung up on, well, we can't justify that this happened, or that this was being done, or this was being said. Well, no, maybe we can't justify it, but that doesn't mean that we can't explain it, and it doesn't mean that we can't try to understand it. So everything that happens, everything that's being said by someone, even though that you say something to me and I go like, oh, that made me feel so uncomfortable. I really don't like you saying that to me. But at the end of the day, if I ask you about it, you will be able to explain to me where that statement come from. And then I can understand that. It doesn't mean that I still feel that your statement was justified, but it can be explained. And that to me is, if we can just get a little closer and a little bit more open-minded towards just explanations are always there, then communication can do wonders.
In the past, I used to work with a lot of Danish clients in India, and I often struggled with my accent. I either struggle with my communication strategy, and I also feel offended by the irony the Danes might use sometimes, and I take it personally. And it took me some while to actually understand that it was not meant to hurt me, but it was just a gesture of jokes or mean jokes, which was a cultural thing and which is very common in Denmark. And So to get to know that person on a personal level, we have to involve a lot of cultural activities.
Right.
That opens up a lot of barriers. Ah, you meant this way.
Right.
Oh, maybe I was wrong in the first place.
Yeah.
That opens up a lot of barriers, opens up a lot of misunderstood notions or conundrums that we have, and that really helped me gel even more closer to the person I used to work with before, and cracking jokes, and then trying to help each other projects and knowing them on a personal level really helped me navigate the lifestyle in Denmark. But that has to be from both parties. So both the Danish colleague and I have to be accepting that this is the person I'm going to work with, and I have to work with him for a long term. Like it's almost 2 years we've been working closely. So I could actually resonate with what you said about reaching to the person and say, I'm offended. Telling that person that I'm hurt on this face, or maybe you should have told me this way, or it is basically one form of communication to the person, just to let you know that how I felt.
Yeah.
That really helps reach to the other person and try to understand this person or not. It starts with questioning.
Absolutely, it does. And the only thing that never helps is me saying to you, if I got offended by something that you said, is me saying, I don't want you to say that, or I don't think that you should say that because it offended me. Because, well, first of all, who am I? Who made me the ruler of what is allowed to be said or not? I'm not the king of the world. So I'm never in a position where I can tell someone else that I don't think you can say that, simply because if the fact was that it offended me. What I can say is just being open and say, it offended me because of this and this and this, it triggered this and this and this. But that's also why I've been trying to develop this concept, the MINT formula, that the book introduces, but that these interviews and these articles are also about, is because we can always assume in a communication scenario, whether it's within a corporation or whether it's just two people, we can always assume that there is something that I don't know about you in terms of motivating why you say what you say, and vice versa. And that's sort of the analogy of the mint. It comes from that glorious 80s movie Roadhouse, where this character says to Patrick Swayze's character that I'm working in this bar and we have a sign over the toilet that says don't eat the big white mint, meaning that there are people so drunk and so stupid in this bar that they're going to go out into the urinal, watch down, and they're going to see this white thing lying in the urinal and they're going to think it's candy. and so, but the point is, it's a brilliant analogy for that things are often not what they seem to be. And that's exactly the dynamic that's in place here. And even more when you have language barriers, even more when you have cultural barriers, then it's just layers upon layers where you can keep assuming that there are deeper and deeper things that you don't understand about that person. And until you ask the person, until you gauge in a conversation with that person and say, I just can't resonate with what you're saying and the way you're saying it, because it hits me. I don't know if I'm offended, I generally think offended is an awful word to ever use in a conversation because it's super negatively loaded. It will always make it feel like if I say I'm offended by what you're saying, there's an undertone as if I'm saying I think you're an awful person. There's a negativity in that word. So I try to avoid using that word, and it's just that there was something about you, or not about you, but about what you said, the way you said it. It hit me, it triggered something in me that made me enormously uncomfortable, to the point where I was thinking about it, the rest of the evening. I couldn't fall asleep because it just keep feeling bad. There was something about it. And if you can start there, and then wanting to be honestly interested about figuring out what is this What is it? What is it about the white mint about this person that I'm not seeing? Because there's something in this person. It could be a language thing. It could be a cultural thing where we're just very different in terms of how we're used to resonating and thinking. But I think that's where you need to dare to start, is just to talk to people and say, hey, listen, I feel like this about this that's been said. So talk to me some more, because I need to understand why I'm reacting to this. It's not your fault that I'm reacting like this, because I assume that you didn't mean to offend me willfully, so it's not your fault, which means it's on me. It's my choice to get offended. It's my reaction. And if I want to understand it, I need to talk to you. I need to figure out what drove your choice of communication, because then I can figure out, okay, how am I going to deal with my own reactions and with my choice of communication going forward.